Diane, sign these divorce papers right now. Once you're done, take our daughter and leave. This is non-negotiable. After being away on a business trip for over 3 months, my husband Rick came home. Immediately, he shoved divorce papers in my face. I put down my phone, glanced at my daughter, Mary, and then told him, "What are you talking about? You're the one who's leaving. Dad, you don't know anything. You're such an idiot." Huh? What are you two talking about? This house belongs to my dad. I'll inherit it eventually, so it's basically mine. When I tell you to leave, you leave without a word. My daughter and I were shocked by his ridiculous logic. As Mary just mentioned, Rick didn't know anything. On the other hand, we knew everything. How foolish he was and that his life was essentially over. To deliver the first blow, I pulled out a piece of paper. Rick's expression quickly turned to confusion. "Diane, what's that? Why do you have divorce papers ready too? And why is your name already filled in? What's going on?" Huh? I planned on getting a divorce from the start. That's why I prepared the papers. Since you already have yours, I'll sign them instead. With a calm demeanor, I reached for the divorce papers my husband prepared. He snatched them away, his face contorted in anger. "Are you kidding me? That's not what I want to know. I want to know why you planned on getting a divorce. You're hiding something from me, aren't you? Spill it out." He looked like a toddler throwing a tantrum. He just couldn't stand not getting his way. I was again amazed at how foolish he was. It seemed like today would be filled with such moments. "No, the one who's kidding is you, Dad. How can you ask why she planned on getting a divorce when you have a mistress and a secret kid?" "What? Mary, what are you talking about? Me, with a mistress and a secret kid? That's ridiculous." "Then why are you divorcing Mom? Isn't it for your mistress and secret kid? Come on, answer me." My husband fell silent. He seemed stunned by the unexpected counterattack. He always looked down on me and ignored our daughter. He didn't know her interests or her dreams for the future. Hearing the words mistress and secret kid from us clearly unnerved him. However, he quickly regained his composure and responded calmly. "Mary, I'm not divorcing your mom because of an affair. Adults have their reasons. But those reasons don't include a mistress and a secret kid. You don't have any proof, do you? Don't jump to conclusions." There was a hint of smugness on his face. He was confident we had no evidence. Indeed, Rick was cautious, and I couldn't find evidence of his affair at home. So, my hypothesis was that he was cheating during his business trips. This time, Rick had been on a long business trip for over 3 months, and in recent years, his trips had increased, with him coming home less and less. I decided to follow him. I discovered an unbelievable truth about his secret, but he had no idea I knew everything. I'll say it again. Don't jump to conclusions without proof. If you're going to accuse someone, show evidence. That's common sense. Common sense, huh? Hard to take that seriously from someone so unreasonable. And do you really think we'd accuse you without evidence? Here, this is the proof you wanted. I handed Rick a photo. Immediately, he looked more shocked than he had all day. The photo showed him meeting with his mistress. Specifically, it showed Rick inviting his mistress into an apartment. In the photo, the two of them looked like a newly dating couple, full of freshness. To me, it was utterly disgusting. Why do you have this photo? Did you follow me and take this in secret? That's exactly right. I followed you on your business trip. You underestimated me, so you weren't cautious at all. Thanks to that, it was easy to take these pictures. As I smiled defiantly, Rick's anger only grew. As Mary said, Rick was planning to divorce me for his mistress and secret child, treating me like disposable trash once I was no longer needed. If it were just me, I might have tolerated it. But Rick also disregarded our daughter. That, I couldn't forgive. When I glared at Rick with resentment, he glared back but then smirked. Well played, Diane. I might have underestimated you. But it doesn't change anything now that you've found out. I'm leaving you both to live with my new family. So, pack up and leave my house. My house, huh? As I said before, you're the one who's leaving. This isn't your house. Mom's right, Dad. You should pack your stuff and go. I don't want to see your face anymore. What? I already told you, this house belongs to my dad and I'll inherit it. This is my house. Immediately, I pulled out a prepared document. For a moment, Rick looked confused and read the paper with a bewildered expression. After checking the contents repeatedly, he shouted in astonishment. Diane, adopted by my dad? What does this mean? I don't understand. Yes, the document I prepared was an adoption paper. It clearly stated that I was adopted by my father-in-law. Rick became wildly agitated and started pulling his hair. I calmly conveyed the facts to him. Actually, your dad adopted me. This house is set to be inherited by me. So, it's not your house, and you're the one who has to leave. Do you understand now? There's no way I can understand that my dad would adopt you without telling me? And leave the house to you? This must be a fake registry, Diane. You went to great lengths to deceive me. Fake? No way. Forging an adoption paper would be a serious crime. I wouldn't take such a risk, especially not for someone like you. While Rick was in a frenzy, I remained calmer than ever. I was merely stating facts. Unchangeable facts. It was understandable that Rick was so upset. His mother had died when he was young, and his father had raised him alone. Because of this, his father had always doted on him. Rick had shown gratitude towards his father. That's why Rick couldn't believe it and shouted out. It's absolutely impossible. Dad would never leave the house to you. You don't have to believe me. I'm just telling the truth. No matter how much you scream, it doesn't matter. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask him yourself? With those words, I pointed to a specific place. Rick's gaze followed my finger. There was the smartphone I had set down when he thrust the divorce papers at me. It was placed face down, hiding the screen. Rick flipped it over. Immediately, his face turned pale, and he started trembling. Seeing that, I smiled defiantly once more. Rick, everything Diane is saying is true. A male voice came from the smartphone, causing Rick to tremble even more. That voice belonged to his father. Actually, I had been on a call with his father, and he had been listening to the speaker the whole time. The entire conversation had been heard by his father. Rick seemed terrified, including the fact that everything had been heard. Dad, why? The one who wants to ask questions is me. Why did you hurt Diane and Mary by having a mistress and a secret child? I'm almost at your house. Let's talk face to face. With that, Rick's father hung up the phone. Rick, stunned, turned his gaze to me, but there was no strength in his eyes. The man who always looked down on me with a strong attitude now seemed as meek as a lamb. I had calculated that his father was Rick's weak spot, but the damage seemed to be greater than I imagined. But this isn't the end. In fact, it's just the beginning. Rick still has hidden truths yet to be revealed. A few minutes later, his father arrived and confronted Rick. Rick's father's face was red with anger, while Rick's face was pale. In this tense moment, it was Rick who spoke first. Dad, this must be a mistake, right? You're going to leave this house to me, right? The adoption with Diane is a lie, isn't it? That was my intention. Until I learned your true nature. You look down on Diane, neglect Mary, and on top of that, you have a mistress and a secret child. You've deceived me as well, haven't you? I don't have a mistress or a secret child. Diane is just making things up. Don't lie. I know Diane followed you and took pictures of your affair. You make excuses even when there's proof. How much more do you want to disappoint me? Rick's father's sharp gaze pierced through him like a knife. Even I felt a chill from his terrifying stare, and Rick was left speechless, his head hung low. With his father knowing the truth, Rick could only admit everything and apologize. That was the least he could do. If he had apologized here, he might have had a better future. However, Rick began to make more excuses. Dad, don't be fooled. Diane is probably after your inheritance and faked the photos. Nowadays, anyone can edit pictures. You can't say I have a mistress and a secret child based on one photo. Despite his fear, Rick spoke smoothly. He was a top salesman at his company. That's why he had so many business trips, and his eloquence was top-notch. Knowing this, he likely intended to talk his way out of this situation. If we didn't know the truth, he might have succeeded. But we knew everything, so it wouldn't work on us. I decided to make my next move to silence Rick. Rick, look at the photo again. There's something clearly wrong with it. I took out the photo of Rick and his mistress. The one where he's inviting her into the apartment. I didn't mention it before, but the woman in the photo is a friend from high school. I travel a lot for work, and she let me store my stuff temporarily. Sometimes she treated me to dinner, but she's not my mistress. So you did go to her place? That's the problem. The photo shows you inviting her in. If it were her place, it should be the other way around, right? Rick, you rented that apartment just for your affair, didn't you? As I hit the nail on the head, Rick's eyes darted around, clearly agitated. He had a look that said, "How do you know so much?" Unable to answer my question, Rick fell silent, but our daughter Mary spoke up next. Dad, I told Mom. I figured you rented an apartment just for your affair. You might not know this, but I love novels. I want to be a novelist someday. I read a lot, and there are stories about scumbags who rent apartments just to cheat, just like you. Mary showed several novels she had prepared and flipped to the relevant pages. When Rick looked at the contents, he saw stories just like Mary described. Renting an apartment just to cheat, Dad, you're really an idiot. Even if she were a high school friend, casually going to a single woman's home is messed up. What does Mom mean to you? Didn't you marry her because you loved her? Mary asked Rick with genuine curiosity. Rick had said adults have their reasons, but ultimately, it was just an excuse for his affair, which Mary deeply despised. It's just a novel, it has nothing to do with me. Renting an apartment just to cheat is ridiculous. I haven't done anything like that. Dad, you believe me, right? You can still revoke the inheritance decision. You're just being deceived. Rick pleaded with his father, avoiding Mary's cold stare. But his father remained expressionless, staring straight at Rick. At this point, Rick should have realized the significance of his father adopting me and planning to leave the house to me. I've said it before, we knew everything. We weren't planning to corner Rick with just one photo or a novel's content. Rick's father pulled out something he had prepared. A thick envelope. Rick seemed to sense something and started trembling again. When he checked the contents, he collapsed in despair. The envelope contained a detective's report and a stack of photos. It showed Rick with his mistress and their child. We had hired a professional and were fully prepared. Rick's affair was certain from the start, but that wasn't all. Rick, I've been thinking about why you rented an apartment just for your affair. The detective told me the answer. You had multiple mistresses at your business trip locations, and you rented several apartments for that purpose. You pretended to be single to cheat. You investigated that far, huh? Why didn't you just say so from the start? This is ridiculous. Who's being ridiculous here? Renting multiple apartments just to cheat with several people. You deceived everyone to fulfill your desires. How does that make any sense? I was angrier than I had ever been in my life. My husband, who only thought of himself, hurt everyone around him with his deceitful actions. And now he dared to raise his voice and blame us? It was unforgivable. My father-in-law adopted me and planned to leave me the house to teach Rick a lesson and make him understand reality. He must have wanted to believe in his beloved son if he could. But when the truth came out, it showed Rick disregarded his family and kept mistresses. On top of that, he lied and made pathetic excuses. Sadly, my father-in-law had to accept it. His own son had gone off the deep end. By the way, that story about the high school friend is also a lie, isn't it? That woman is the CEO's daughter, right? The daughter of your business partner, named Remy. Don't act like we don't know anything. Dad, you're the worst. You're endlessly stupid. I never want to see your face again. Get out. Rick, admit everything and apologize. That's all you can do. Even if you're not forgiven, show some sincerity. Finally, Rick fell completely silent. He seemed to feel our icy stares, and he started trembling. I thought seeing Rick shrink away would make me feel better, but I felt a void in my chest instead. Where did we go wrong? Was it a mistake from the moment we met? These questions crossed my mind, but I found no answers. Regardless, my relationship with Rick was over. He would get what he deserved. As I was about to speak, he said something shocking. I'm not going to bow down, you idiots. I'm not wrong. I supported this family, and you're complaining over a little cheating? Don't you have any gratitude? Answer me. His yelling was so loud that it shook the room, and we were all taken aback. It seemed he no longer cared to hide his true nature. With a furious look in his eyes, he started spewing more insults. Diane, a housewife like you shouldn't defy me. I was kind enough to marry you, and you should be grateful. You should be happy you were of any use to me. And I never wanted kids. They're just a burden. Mary, I never wanted you. I shouldn't have let Diane have you. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a loud thud, and Rick was violently thrown to the ground. I looked over to see my father-in-law, red with rage. I had never seen him so angry, and it shocked me. Who do you think you are, Rick? You can't shoulder the responsibilities of a husband or a father, and yet you dare to speak like this? You say you never wanted Mary? Are they just tools to you? Answer me. Rick, who had been hit hard, was in a daze. It was likely the first time he had seen his father this angry, let alone been struck by him. While I don't condone violence, Rick's comments were reprehensible. I tried to calm my father-in-law to prevent further escalation, but Rick stood up and grabbed his father. You were always at work, weren't you? Every day, work, work, work. Even when Mom was hospitalized or her condition worsened, you were working and never came back. I was just following your example. Don't act all high and mighty when you neglect our family too. Rick also glared sharply at his father and vented his feelings. His father never looked away, staring back at Rick, but he didn't argue. The truth was, Rick's father had indeed spent most of his time working. When Rick's mother was alive, they never had a wealthy lifestyle. Then, when she fell ill, they needed money. His father worked even harder, hoping to save his wife. It was the only option he saw. As a result, he wasn't there when she passed away. Recalling that time, his father once said, I only thought about saving her. Being by her side should have been my duty. I still don't know if what I did was right. Seeing his father like this, Rick must have felt his father was heartless. Rick likely resented his father. Misunderstandings like this aren't uncommon. So, I can understand it. Still, I couldn't forgive Rick. From what I could see, Rick knew his mother's death wasn't his father's fault. Yet, he brought up the past to blame his father, trying to gain an advantage. But no matter what, I couldn't tolerate him hurting our daughter. I decided to give Rick one last chance. Rick, don't blame your father. Everything you did was your own decision. If you don't change that wrong mindset, your life is over. Listen, this is your final warning. Admit everything and apologize. Right here, right now, declare that you will change. Who's going to listen to you? I'll live freely as I always have. Here's my advice. If you bow down and apologize now, I'll support you after the divorce. You're just a housewife with no skills, you'll struggle financially. Don't come crying to me. At that moment, I realized it was futile to say anything more. And at that moment, Rick's life was truly over. No matter how good he was at his job or how much money he had, in the end, it's about people. A man who has lost sight of what's important as a human can't lead a decent life. And I still hadn't told him everything. He was missing something crucial. As I looked at him with pity, Rick smirked. He signed the divorce papers and left the house. A heavy silence fell between us, stunned. I bowed my head and apologized to my daughter. Mary, I'm sorry. I should have asked you to stay somewhere else today. You shouldn't have had to hear Rick's terrible words. I'm truly sorry. Mom, don't worry about it. I insisted on being part of the discussion. Besides, I'm in high school, not a child. But are you okay, Mom? You never get angry, so you must be exhausted. Mary gently placed her hand on my shoulder. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. It was my mistake in raising him. I've done something truly unforgivable. I'll make sure Rick takes responsibility. Just wait. No, Dad, it's not your fault. Rick's affair was premeditated. It's entirely his mistake. You stood by Mary and me, and were truly grateful. I thanked my father-in-law. There was no falsehood in my words. Without my father-in-law, I wouldn't have been able to stand up to Rick. And there's no need to make Rick take responsibility. Even if we do nothing, he'll come to apologize. This isn't a prediction, using Rick's words, it's a certainty. Though my father-in-law looked puzzled, he finally smiled and gave me a reassuring pat on the back. A fitting future awaited Rick, who had squandered his last chance. We just had to wait for that time to come. A few days later. While I was with my daughter, my phone kept ringing. Every call displayed Rick's name. The call log filled up like a waterfall. I took a deep breath and answered at the right moment. Immediately, a desperate scream came through. Diane, please! Hide me! You're the only one I can rely on now. Rick, isn't there something you need to say before you ask for help? Right. Diane, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. I'll even get down on my knees and apologize to Mary. No, that's okay. I don't want you to see her again. I'm very busy, so I'm hanging up now. Goodbye. No, don't hang up. I'm seriously in a bad situation. You're the only one I can rely on. Remy and the other mistresses have disappeared, and I can't contact them. But the worst part is, you're being chased by the gang, right? How do you know that? Rick seemed genuinely shocked, but I knew everything. As I said many times, I knew it all. The truth is, Remy wasn't a CEO's daughter, she lied to deceive Rick. She orchestrated everything, providing Rick with his mistresses. In other words, Rick was being played by Remy. Rick spent money and gifts on his mistresses, which she collected. Remy had connections with the gang group for emergencies, and Rick, now useless, was being chased by them. When I revealed everything, Rick was speechless. When he didn't respond to my calls, I was about to hang up when he started shouting. Why didn't you tell me if you knew? I'm in real danger here. What are you going to do about it, you bitch? I wanted to drag you down to hell. But I was torn until the end. I considered telling you everything to end things peacefully. So I gave you a final warning. You didn't listen. This is your own doing, Rick. No, really, I have no one to rely on. My colleagues ignore me, and my friends just laugh at me. You're the only one who can save me, Diane. Please, we're still married, right? What do you mean? You treated us like tools. Didn't you tell me never to come crying to you? And now you're the one crying to me? Do you have no pride? Please, don't say that. I'll pay you. Being a single mother must be tough. I'll support you, so let's make a deal. I couldn't help but laugh at Rick's words. This man truly understood nothing. I decided to deliver the final blow with one last truth. I don't need your support. My income is twice yours. If my income is $300,000, then $600,000? No way, you're just a housewife. I'm not a housewife. I'm a novelist. Recently, my works have been adapted into anime, manga, dramas, and movies. I don't need your money. Stop lying. That's impossible. You never cared about Mary and me. By the way, the novels Mary reads are mine. She wants to be a novelist like me. But you wouldn't know that. Believe it or not, I'm just telling the truth. This time, Rick fell completely silent. It was ironic that neglecting his family had led to his own downfall. Rick would face a miserable end, but it was no concern of mine. There was no way I would save him after he hurt my daughter and father-in-law. After a deep sigh, I informed him about the child support and alimony before ending the call. Some time passed, and I heard nothing from Rick. Since the alimony and child support were paid, I assumed he was alive, but I had no idea what he was doing. If Rick didn't change his wrong ways, he was headed straight for hell. Diane, I apologize again. I'm truly sorry. I stand by you and Mary. I'll be here to protect you both. With those words, my father-in-law smiled at me. I want to be with my family when it matters. That was the answer my father-in-law had come to. Whether it was the right one, we didn't know. What mattered was to keep thinking about it, he said. Few people can clearly state the meaning or reason for their existence. Maybe the lack of a clear answer is the answer itself, but it's important to think about one's happiness within that. At the very least, I want to live thinking about the happiness of my family. And, of course, that includes my own happiness as well.